Welcome back to the Sports Business Take, your home for sports industry news with a little personality. I am Paul Hine. He is Zach Creekmore. How you doing today, Zach?
Doing great, Paul. How are you doing, brother?
Good. We're sponsored by. Wait, nope, never mind. We don't have a sponsor. We're not big enough. I do want to get a sponsor though. That would be cool if we could just, I don't know, reach out to some people and try to see. But
That would be fire.
we don't definitely have a big enough audience for that yet. So I'm trying to figure out how we can get out there a little more. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Trying to figure out how we can get out there a little bit more. Obviously, like I did the whole stuff with the website. We're on like a bunch of different social media platforms, but I got to figure out some ways to get us in with some, some more audiences. Maybe through guests or
break,
something.
we're moving different. Christmas break, we're moving different. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
Don't worry. I got ideas. I just need time. I got ideas. I just need time.
Yeah. Okay. For sure. We can brainstorm. I'd like to do like once a week over Christmas break. That'd be good too. Because like so far this fall, we've done like once every 2 weeks or once every 10 days or something. Because we're both super busy, but hopefully we can over the winter up it a little bit more. So the first thing we have to talk about today, and I'm going to let you introduce this because you're the soccer guy, is the National Women's Soccer League signs a new media rights deal.
Yeah.
So you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So NWSL, National Women's Soccer League, signs a new 4-year deal for domestic rights deal with CBS, ESPN, Amazon, and Scripps. Scripps is Ion Television, being the featured network. So NFL draft, pregame show for all the games it's covered, going to
NWSL.
118. Yeah, NWSL.
You said NFL.
Did I really? Oh gosh,
yeah, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure we had that.
Yes, absolutely. So the 4 networks will cover 118 matches every year. Previously, it was only 30 on nationwide television, domestic rights.
Huge difference,
right? Huge difference. It definitely speaks to the impact and the growth of the NWSL, which we'll dive deeper into as we go.
Absolutely.
Throughout this conversation, right? Reportedly a $240 million deal, which is $60 million a year, 40 times what they were making previously with CBS since 2020, which is at $1.5 million a year. And most notably, this is the largest deal in women's sports history, right?
Yeah. I just want to let people have that sink in for a second. The largest deal in women's sports history. So this is a really, really big deal for them, like a huge accomplishment for their league. And I'm sure their players have seen this and been like, wow, I'm going to be, featured a lot more in the national media coverage and stuff like that. I feel like they're going to get way more attention now than they did before because they're having 4 times the games covered, literally 4 times the games. I mean, -2, but basically 4 times the games, right? So, I mean, they're just going to be displayed so much more. And their league commissioner described it as the beginning of our future, which is honestly one of the most powerful things about this to me is that makes sense. They started in 2012 and so they've been around for 11 years, but now they're looking at this as the beginning because this is really the point where they take off.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're thinking about the NWSL, right, specifically, this is the 3rd version of professional women's soccer throughout the U.S. and throughout its history. So this is a huge milestone for them really getting that. And seeing the growth of the women's game overall, like we've seen in Europe, like we saw with the Women's World Cup this summer, like we've talked about from there, right? This is huge for them. And I'm going to make a call back, right? 2 years ago when I first came into college, right, we were writing about the NWSL in a way where the NWSL might be collapsing, right? They had sexual assault allegations. There were coaches issues. There was major issues financially because of all of this stuff. And my Sports Quote of the Week referencing from ESPN, right? In its decade of existence, National Women's Soccer League has been rocked by widespread allegations of emotional, verbal, and sexual abuse, something that we saw as near as 2 years, a year and a half ago, right? Something that's still an ongoing issue of all this stuff, right? There's a new documentary out, an ESPN 60-minute type documentary called Truth Be Told, now available on ESPN+. I highly suggest giving it a watch if you don't know a lot about the NWSL and kind of how it's developed and how it's grown. But these allegations are stuff we're talking about that's really recent. And for a league to go and turn around to elevate itself to this level in that quick of time,
Right.
wow, the sky has to be the limit, right?
Right. They clearly, struck a chord with their audience because,
Mm.
their audience size just grew so much this past season. Two factors that helped them get the deal where they had a record number of viewers for the championship game, 915,000, but also total viewership. And I think this is the most telling part of the story to me for how they captured their audience this year. Their total viewership was up 21% from last year. They grew their audience by a fifth, right? That's actually like a big deal, right? And I think that's part of the reason that these networks looked at them and said, "Hey, we think that they deserve this amount of money because they clearly are showing that their product is going to be successful."
And absolutely agreed. And I'm thinking, right, when we're talking about the women's game and we're talking before COVID, right, it wasn't something that was really televised outside of
No,
probably the final 16 of the Women's World Cup, right? And I
right,
don't think I, as a soccer viewer or somebody as a casual viewer, would really see that. So looking post COVID, and I'm going to make some really weird connections here, but thinking about post Sunderland Till I Die, right, which came out during COVID, which was huge and boomed up that soccer population of people looking for that content to consume. Post all these documentaries that were done about like Leeds and Man City and all this stuff, and post now Welcome to Wrexham, right, which in season 2 has a really big focus on their women's team, in a couple of their episodes, and really connect that and connect it as we're talking about it as a whole club, as a whole thing, and then seeing the growth of it post COVID when we come back, and like games like the Women's FA Cup final having 90,000 people in attendance, right? And still
right.
their attendance numbers are much less overall, but the amount of growth and the desire that it's shown for this has really opened the doors. And I can really only explain it as a post COVID phenomenon, right? If COVID didn't happen, I don't see this happening.
So you think their growth has to do with the COVID and the fact that, everybody kind of couldn't watch sports for a while and then came back, and then, in these last couple seasons it's been way better because people are, watching something that they were deprived of before.
I don't think it's a sole reason, but I think it's definitely something that we can look to see connections, right? Because you look and you see the growth of podcasting on it. You look and see the growth of documentaries. You look and you see the growth of all these things. And then you go and you see this growth from the women's game perspective on the same side, increasing and growing in the same way. It's really hard for me to say that I don't see a link and a connection where
I mean,
the
it makes
phenomenon of
sense.
COVID, right? Because it's driving people to the stadium, right? They want to be able to see the game because they didn't get to see it for 3.5 years,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
So
no,
it's
that
it's
totally
something they're
makes
craving.
sense.
But there's
Right.
definitely other factors like how we consume media and all this stuff, and how they're advertising it more, and there's the whole movement of equality and equal pay, and making
Right.
sure that those opportunities are created. So I think there's a lot more to it outside of that, but I think that
Absolutely.
played a key role.
I mean, this definitely shows that women's sports is certainly on the come up compared to even 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, where there wasn't a ton of coverage of women's sports in the media. Um, they, I mean, I think the NWSL didn't traditionally do very well pre-COVID. Am I correct?
Correct. And
Like attendance
hence
wise?
why there were hence why there were 3 different women's professional leagues before the NWSL, which had
Right.
all gone and folded, right? Which had all gone
Right.
and seen a lack of success, and now the NWSL goes in, and we were talking about it 2 years ago, just outside of COVID. Are they going to fold because they didn't have the financial backing? They didn't have this, and I remember I wrote essays about it in my freshman intro to sports management class, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, no way they do. They're going, they're going to boom, right? They're going to bounce
Yeah.
back from this, and they're going to go. And oh my God, I was right, and I'm so happy about it. But we don't need to worry
Yeah.
about that.
And to go from that place to where they are now, I think
Yeah.
shows um, a huge dedication on both their league's part and their team's staff, that
Mm.
they realized that they had a good product and stuck with it despite the fact that they typically weren't doing so well. And they realized that, hey, this is going to work eventually. We just have to be persistent. And
Absolutely.
that's one of the things that I took out of it. And the other thing I took out of it was the combination of the new money that they're getting and the coverage. I mean, think about it: 40 times the money that they were making, and 4 times the matches that are being covered is going to increase their influence in the sports world immensely compared to what they had before, right? We're talking now your teams have much, now your marketing and social teams have much more content to put out there, right? And now your viewers, your audience can find you not just on your own streaming platform, because that's where they had been really before, other than CBS in their previous
Correct.
deal where they were at 1.5 million a year. They have been on their own streaming service. So now your viewers can find you in many more places than they were before. And that ease of access is something that I believe is going to have their audience grow substantially.
Absolutely agreed. And by far, like looking at it and thinking, holy moly, what's going to happen, right? With the Olympics coming up recently in 2024 and how that's all going to process the U.S. women's national team getting a new coach. And I listened to a YouTube video on it earlier this week. The coach from Chelsea, who's been probably the top club coach in all of European women's soccer for the last 4 to 8 years, right? Probably maybe only beaten out by the coach who's leading Lyon. I don't remember his or her name, but that's a huge statement, I think, for U.S. women's soccer, right? Going forward, the NWSL is now attracting more athletes from outside of just the U.S. or South America and Europe like it has before. It has a huge population, and it's starting to just grow, like very different from where the MLS is seen, and really starting to become maybe the NWSL can be seen as a premier division of women's soccer, right? Which I believe it
I think
is.
it's going to be. I think it's
But I
absolutely
think
going to be. The new money that they're receiving opens up so many possibilities for them in terms of now they can reach out to bigger companies to try to sponsor and partner with them, right? You know, their partnership is going to increase by a lot. And as they collect more and more money from partners and from sponsors, that is only going to lead to the growth of their fan base, because now they're going to have more money to put into advertising and marketing and, merchandising and all of the things that grow your fan base, right? And that add to the hype of how you put your season together and ultimately ends in the climax of your championship.
Yeah, and absolutely agreed. Right. The only concern for me is right. Soccer is a European dominated sport, and we've seen it with the MLS. Of like the MLS is trying to bring those, I guess, premier players at the end of their career, like Leo Messi, and trying to develop, I guess, as a league. But they're always going to be overshadowed by those top 5 European leagues. The NWSL now is an opportunity where they aren't going to be shadowed. They have that financial comparison because of how I'm not male centric the European soccer mind can be,
I
right?
was going
And
to say, it
how
seems like the NWSL is the top women's league in the world, at
yeah,
least in my mind at the moment.
I would say it's between that and the Women's Super League in England, and it's between the two of them. I don't see, and I haven't heard enough about the um, like um, the French league or the Spanish league, and I'm forgetting their names, but they're both super hyper competitive. Like Lyon is one of the elite teams. There's some great teams out of the Bundesliga, the women's Bundesliga specifically, and I think there's definitely opportunities there, but they just don't get the same media coverage because of how male dominated those areas can be, and
Yeah, that makes
because like
sense.
the way the NWSL works is the clubs of the NWSL are not directly connected or linked, or majorly most of them are not directly connected or linked to MLS clubs. So it's not the same way the women's game in Europe works, where they are directly linked to those Premier
That's
League
probably a
clubs or
good thing
Bundesliga
for them
clubs.
to be independent, right?
Correct. That's my thought, right? Because they're going to be able to get more media coverage. They're able to do their own social media. They're able to get that specific focus.
Right. They can
Where
have
they're
their own
not
ideas. They're not
competing.
relying on, yeah,
Right.
right. They can have
Like
their
for
own
me,
ideas. They're not relying on somebody.
exactly. Right. For me, as
Yeah.
a Brighton Hove Albion fan, right, I go and when I'm on Instagram, I have BHAFC women and Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club, right? And it's like why it's Brighton Hove Albion FC women. Why do they have to have a different Instagram page? Why shouldn't, right? You know what I mean? As much as like I get why that kind of worked out, but I think for teams who are able to have their own Instagram page and have their own name, they're going to be able to get so much more coverage and so much more drive to their thing because they are entirely self driven. Um,
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
yeah,
To me, I would be so excited if I was working in one of those teams right now because this opens up the door for so many possibilities. What do you think are some of the things that we're going to see as a result of this deal in terms of how the teams operate?
I definitely think the price point of player movement and all that stuff is probably going to become a little bit higher. But I think the NWSL for the last 2-3 years has been run super well. And I think will continue to be. I think they have to keep attacking it the way they have been. I don't think there's going to be a major change in terms of financials or how things are run. Maybe they get a little bit more extravagant with fan environments or the online media interaction, just because I know they've been like the streaming service I've watched them on in the past is Paramount Plus. So I think for them being on live television, maybe there's going to be a better string of commenters or right all that stuff. It's super complicated, so it really depends on what they decide to do as a league and how they want to approach it. But there's definitely a lot of avenues and opportunities where fan interaction is going to be huge. I think we're going to see a lot of TV avenues open up, whether it be they're trying to get creative, like doing stuff like the NHL has been doing recently, or like the NFL with all the digital media stuff. But I don't think they're big enough to have that audience to create two separate things. Um, it's interesting. I don't know where they're going to go, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what they decide to do with all of their newfound cash for sure.
Yeah,
It's there's so many different possibilities that they could take, and it's a very exciting time, not just for them but also for women's sports. Right, this kind of
mm,
represents how women's sports has grown in specifically the last few years, not just um, you know for them, but we've seen the WNBA grow, women's college basketball, that kind of stuff grow, women's college soccer grow. So um, having the NWSL have the largest duel in women's sports history and having them be, in my mind, I think they're the most successful women's league in the U.S. at the moment. Um, Having them be that is only going to mean good things for women's sports going forward.
agreed.
Unless you have anything else on that, you mentioned the NHL, and the NHL is our next topic. So, all right. So the NHL the NHL just launched a digital collectibles platform called Breakaway. So for those who don't know what digital collectibles are, because a lot of people don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I say that, it's think like your traditional like NFT, right? That's basically what they're doing. An NFT, for anyone who doesn't know, is a non-fungible token. It's basically digital currency. But the NHL didn't want to call it that. They didn't want to call it an NFT because it sounds better from a marketing perspective if you call it a digital collectible, right? Think about if you're a prospective buyer, I think you're going to be more willing to spend your money on something that you can actually understand what it means rather than an acronym. But that's just me.
No, I
But
totally
basically,
agree.
yeah,
Especially with like,
basically, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, but all the things with how the NFT kind of the consensus of it being a bit of a scam now. Due to
Yeah,
the stuff that's
right,
happened with
exactly.
those a lot of celebrities, so I think going the digital fungible token makes so much sense there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're not the first league to get into this. The MLB, NFL, and NBA have all experimented with this kind of thing, but there's definitely some unique elements to what they're doing. So basically, what they're doing is they're having this is a direct quote from their website, by the way. Fans and collectors can collect, gift, trade, display, and participate in set collections and challenges to earn exciting rewards. And the collectibles are different highlights throughout NHL history. So think like, I'm a Bruins fan, Bobby Orr's goal, like that kind of stuff, right? So huge moments in NHL history that you can buy and trade with other fans, and that's really their unique thing for the NHL Breakaway platform is the trade lounge. where fans can, and again, I'm quoting from their website, trade packs and highlights of their favorite NHL players with others in the community, as well as search for highlights to trade. Or for, yeah, right. Search for highlights or search for players to trade. So I think this is a really interesting concept. Honestly, it's something before I read this article I had never heard of before. Had you ever heard of any league doing something like this?
No, I never heard of a league doing it, but what it immediately makes me think of is FIFA, right? Like the entire and people spend millions, billions of dollars on FIFA every year. That's their income and
Right.
revenue, right? And it is the whole concept of a transfer market and all of that stuff is you're going to pack players, there's special players you can get, and you're going to be able to sell them in a transfer market, right? And I have
Right.
on my FIFA game, I have 500,000 coins plus in transfer market profit.
Right.
And it's like, that's literally the exact same concept of, okay, you're going to come here and I don't know how you can earn packs. I don't think you could realistically earn packs through watching games. I don't think that's how the NHL would do it. I don't
No.
know exactly what that means, but like you are going to buy a pack, meaning you're spending your money. In
Yeah.
a FIFA
Well,
comparable, you're buying FIFA points and buying the pack, right?
right. And there's some incentive. Just to just go back, you mentioned like buying versus earning, and so there is a challenge portion of it. So again, quoting from them, it introduces challenges for completing sets within categories like highlights and collectibles, team sets, and NHL player sets, with opportunities to earn rewards such as real life NHL experiences and exclusive packs. So to
Wow.
me, I wonder what NHL experiences means. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's like you get to go meet and greet a player for a day, or you get free tickets, or it's a discount to the shop or something like that. There's a bunch of different ways you can go with that. What do you think is going to be the incentivized part of it?
Yeah. And I think it's going to be super cool. There's a European based soccer card trading app that does very similar concept, and it's been super successful. It's huge right now, and people pay $100 plus for cards in the trading deals, right?
Right.
So I think not only are they going to do a huge part, this is going to increase fan interaction because like I'm a grind addict type of person where I get super addicted to something and I love like just collecting stuff. Like if you were to come into
Right.
my room, you just see like I've got random pictures in frames because I like going to Goodwill and getting frames, right? I would
Right.
like going to a hockey game and being able to go and get a player from my favorite team because I'm interacting with the pack or because I'm at a game, or because I'm able to go and interact and all of that. I'm able to go and watch hockey or go and fulfill those whatever challenges they might be. I'm super curious to see what the interaction aspect there is going to be. And because I did that
Absolutely.
challenge, I'm actually able to go to an Islanders game where usually I can't afford the tickets or I don't
Right.
buy the tickets because I'm like, I'd rather save my money. I'll watch it on the TV as much as I'd love to go to a game, right? And I'm able to go and take that next step. So I
Right.
think the fan interaction thing, this is taking it to the next level. It's going to be so awesome. I love it.
Absolutely. I was gonna mention like there's a totally new level of fandom, a totally new dynamic of fandom that's being created. What do you think is going to be kind of the impact of having a new level of connection through this online trading for the NHL? Do you think the fans are going to feel closer to the players or closer to the league because they're watching and buying their favorite highlights now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and beyond the just favorite highlights, like these are your favorite players. These are people that you own a piece into them, right? Like
Right,
the more successful that player is at that franchise, the more your card is going to be worth, right? You
right. It's
are
an
invested
investment.
into a stock, really, right? When you're
Right,
thinking about it
yeah.
that way. So, like obviously, I want to go and see my favorite player succeed, and I want to create that link. Like my FIFA team, and I don't know why I keep drawing it back to FIFA, but it's the most comparable thing I can think of from my life. My FIFA team is full of Brighton and Hove Albion players who no one else on the game is going to ever use, but it's how I enjoy the experience because they're
Right,
players I like seeing, like watching play. There's players that who play for my favorite club and connect to that, so I can see people going and like connecting and collecting their favorite cards from their favorite teams and having that and like, oh, here's my top five and sending texts to their friends who are watching the game. Kind of similar how fantasy football is part of the reason why football is so huge, and that all that interaction they get from that is massive.
Absolutely, it
I
is.
think this is going to be another avenue for that. Um, Again, increasing fan interaction, increasing the opportunities to go and view, and increasing the opportunities to really have that direct connection with players. Of you're like, oh, you're on my team, you're in my thing, I
Right,
have you on my app, let's go, right? And they get
right.
hype about it, right? Especially as a hockey fan, like the energy those people carry as a fan is different from any other sport.
Absolutely,
Like,
it's definitely going to create a new level of connection to it. To me, I wonder how it's going to perform at first because I read that a couple other leagues had dabbled or experimented in this type of thing, like the NBA and the MLB had both done it, but I had never heard of that before. You know what I mean?
mm,
I wonder if they're going to spend a lot of money trying to advertise that they are doing this because otherwise who's going to know about it? You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
they have to get it off the ground running really well, and get it performing really well. And I think one of the things that will help them is the fact that they're making the distinction that is a digital collectible versus an NFT, right? Whereas you said like the NFT reputation online is just it's not what it used to be, right? People don't get really excited about NFTs anymore because a lot of people don't even know what it is because it's an acronym. And this you make it much more personable, right,
mm,
for the fan to be able to understand this is exactly what I'm getting. This is why it's valuable to me. This is why I should make that investment. It's like you said, it's investing in a stock. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they market that and if they market it in coordination with games, right? Do they make the ad for the Breakaway platform live on their games, or do they have it cross into other sports games, or where do they put those ads?
I think those ads, I think being advertising it is going to be the biggest part. Um, but putting it on, like, you have a certain set of games for the first like month of the app being out, where for every game you watch, you get a free pack. And, like, I think that's going to be a way where, like,
That
oh
would
yeah,
be, yeah,
I'm gonna download this app because I have the opportunity to go and get a free whatever because I watched this game, right? And
right.
whether
That
it
would
be
be
like,
a good incentive for sure.
and it could be random moments or it could just be player cards, right? Because I know those moments are probably going to be more rare. I don't know how they're doing pack odds or
Yeah,
anything like that if it's a pack based system, but I
it
think
could be
that's how you
team
get fans
specified.
interacting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
could. It could definitely be like team specified. Like, let's say the Bruins are playing the Flyers, right? I'm going to use Bobby Orr's, famous goal again. Let's say like that's a thing where if you tune into the game for a certain number of minutes, you can earn that pack, right? And that's how
Mm.
they increase the eyeballs that they're getting on their games. I feel like not only is it a way to make the fans closer with the game, but it's also a way to grow your audience because you have an incentive to watch these games now that you did not before as a fan.
Absolutely, very true, and that's going to be a huge part of it. Super curious to see where this goes, just because there's so many different avenues, and everything's going to have to be a chance at, and you're advertising it with that huge moment for that team, even though it's
Right.
probably is like, and making it team specific makes sense. Um, but you have to do a chance at, and it's like, okay, well, of course I want that chance at, but the number of people that are going to get that are probably going to be super low, just because you want
Right.
those really special moments to be worth of really value, because that's how you're going to see the value in your, I guess you could say, in your app, right? Because that's going to be the driving factor. So how can we make very special moments exclusive, but still make every pack and everything that somebody gets involved with feel of value? Is so it's there's
Absolutely.
a tough balance for them to kind of cross there, and I'm curious to see how they manage it. But I know for a fact I'm going to be downloading it, and every hockey game I watch, I'm going to be hoping they do a free pack system so I can get a couple,
Yeah. Right.
and feed my
I
collection
definitely have
addictions.
Right. I definitely have more incentive to watch hockey games now for sure.
Mm,
Um,
agreed.
I think this is going to add a really interesting aspect to their fandom and to their league. And honestly, this is kind of like it's not necessarily a new space, but it's certainly a space that not a lot of teams and leagues have gotten into, at least not for an extended period of time, right? NFTs and
Correct.
and that whole digital space is a relatively new thing in the world within like the last 5 years or so. So I wonder how this is going to affect things like ticket sales, like viewership, like merchandise sales, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think
I, sorry,
no,
just
you're
to
good.
add
Go
on to
ahead.
that, I just had another thought. I wonder if having some of these older moments be in these packs, like or like classic NHL goals and stuff like that. I wonder if that brings back, classic merchandise, right? Like players from 30 years ago plus, and we see a rise in sales of those types of players, right? New England Bobby Orr jerseys, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely another avenue where we're going. We're bringing back that retro feel and giving people the opportunity to interact with our teams in different ways and unique ways. And seeing a team and a league invest in this for a long period of time is something I've really been waiting for, and hopefully fans will give a lot of buy-in, so that feels validated. It's definitely something that I think they should invest in, and I think it's going to be it's the NHL again, in my opinion, in some ways and forms, in some of the things they've done, being a innovator and being something where they're taking that step before anyone
Absolutely.
else, and taking a step if they commit to this long term that before anyone else has. Although, like we've seen it in a weekday form in a week format, I haven't seen it in a full season format where something has really lasted and stuck. And I really
Right.
hope the NHL commits to this and we can see it stick like that.
I do too. I think it's definitely going to be an interesting space to grow because that's a space digitally, right? We talk a lot about social media and stuff, and we know how all of that impacts sales and how your team does, but this is a digital space where we haven't seen how it's going to impact anybody yet, right? Or
Yeah.
well, not really long term at least. We've seen it in short bursts, but not particularly for a league over an entire season or a few seasons. So I wonder. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for sure over the next couple of years if they stick with it, which I hope they do.
Agreed, absolutely. Super, super psyched. I think this is so fun.
Yeah, me too. And it's
Random.
definitely one of those. Sorry, go ahead.
You're good. Go.
I was gonna say it's definitely one of those sports stories that like you don't see on the headlines, but definitely catches your eye. Like, wait, what is that? That sounds kind of cool. I want to check that out. You know what I mean? Which is why I wanted to talk about it in the first place. I like talking about those stories in this platform where it's like it's not gonna make front page headlines, but it's gonna impact something that's gonna impact the product of what you see on TV, right? Or what you see when you go to the game, right? I love talking about those kinds of stories.
Agreed. That's what gets me excited. And I was thinking about it, and I had a random thought during our conversation. I'm like, what if I could get this whatever card or moment of of like an iconic hockey fight? And
Oh yeah,
it's just like
fights.
gloves drop.
Yeah,
I
fights
think that
should
would be
be its own
so.
category.
Yes.
Fights should literally be its own category within like the platform, like or they could do like a ranking system for like best fight of the 80s, best fight of the 90s, best fight of the 2000s, like that kind of stuff. There are literally so many different ways that you can prioritize the highlights, right? Um, and you can make highlights out of literally anything that you want to. So there's a ton of different ways that they can go with this.
Agreed. And I really would be interested to see, especially because I don't know if you saw it, but the Carolina, what are they called? I don't. Carolina Hurricanes. Sorry, I got it
Hurricanes.
there. Right, they had Danbury Whalers jerseys. That's
Yeah.
where the Danbury Whalers were bought out, moved from Hartford. I'm sorry, not Danbury, Hartford Whalers. Um,
Right.
the name was bought and used in Danbury at a certain point during my childhood, so we don't need to worry about that. But it was cool.
No, that's fair.
So Hartford Whalers went and moved to Carolina. They were wearing those jerseys. Do we see these digital collectibles for the Hartford Whalers? Do we see it for
Zach,
other
you still there?
lower hockey
Cut
league
out for a second.
teams? Yeah, you're good. Can you hear me now?
Zach, you still there?
I'm still there.
Okay. You cut
We're
out for
back.
like five to 10 seconds. I
Awesome.
missed the
We're
last
good.
part of what you said. What'd you say?
No, so I was saying, like, can we see the NHL go and use this platform to make, again, those retro moments? Do we see Hartford Whalers digital collectibles? Do we see digital collectibles for teams from lower leagues of hockey, like the Danbury Trashers when they were in that
Oh, with
lower
the
league of hockey? And like,
AHL.
holy moly, do you understand how much I would
They could totally
kill
do
for
like,
a Danbury Trashers digital collectible? Crazy.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely going to increase the value of or the number of collectors that they have interacting with their sport. And also, they could do collabs like you mentioned with their like affiliate leagues. They could do like AHL, ECHL collabs, like that kind of stuff. Even like Canadian Hockey League collabs, right? Like because a lot of the people in Canada watch the NHL, right? Like that's a big
Yeah.
audience there. So there's a ton of different crossovers you can do. I think it would be pretty cool to see a um, Maine Mariners section of those collectibles. That would be interesting.
Agreed, absolutely. And something where it's like a fan who goes to a Maine Mariners game is going to now be able to get a collectible because they're offering that interactive feature of it. Like, I was thinking about it, I don't know,
Right.
because like I think there's so many things you can do with digital media and so many things you can do with fan interactions. And I love this avenue because like you can kind of treat it like Pokemon Go, right? And you go to a game and you have kind of like a scavenger hunt
Yeah,
where you have
definitely.
the opportunity to go and find an interactive thing, and it's like not distracting from the game because there's a certain timetable of it that you put it out before the game or after the game where they're able to go and interact with things in your stadium and find that digital collectible or earn that digital collectible through that way. And there's
Yeah,
so many
I was
avenues
just
I
gonna
think they
say
can do with this.
you just gave me an idea. You could have it be like a reward for like buying like a certain amount of concessions, right? Like let's say you buy like I don't know if they sell hot dogs at NHL games. I'm not gonna lie because I've only been to one Bruins game and I was like 5. But let's say you buy 2 hot dogs and a beer or something like that, and you get a collectible because of it, right? Like that would be a really cool way to incentivize it. Or you buy a hoodie from the shop and you get, a pack or something like that. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways um, that they can have fans interact with it, not only online but also in person in stadium as well.
Absolutely
We're
agreed. I think
cooking.
there's
We're cooking with
we're
ideas right
cooking
now.
with this. We like this idea. We're having fun with it. The
Yeah,
only like
absolutely.
the only issue I can see is like although we're suggesting so many ways they can interact with it and so many ways they can use it and so many fun things, it's like you really have to control how many of what is in circulation.
That's
Just because,
true.
just like money, right? If you're trying to put a value on this and trademark it on this, right, you have to control in some way or form how many of each card is in circulation, and when if
Right.
every card has the equal amount of pack chance, right, and like those really important moments or these really unique things, right, you can't guarantee they're going to get what they want every time, right? You have to
They're gonna
give a
have to
pack and
have
you have
some
to
rules and
circulate cards.
regulations.
Right, exactly. You have to have cards that are circulating in the hundreds. You have to have cards that are circulating in the tens. You have to have cards where maybe there's only like 5 of them in existence, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it desirable. Like
Right.
thinking about it in Pokemon, right? There's a reason that these older Pokemon cards are of value and desirable nowadays, and it's because there's so much less in circulation, and people celebrate and go crazy when they pack this, however expensive Charizard, and they
Right.
still celebrate when they pack another cool card that's only worth $20, right? Because there's however many extra in circulation. So how they manage that is what I'm really interested to see what happens, especially with how they manage just giving the most amount of opportunities to interact with it, because that's how you're going to have to get fans onto the app. Then you can kind of
Yeah.
slowly limit those
Absolutely.
opportunities. But
They're gonna have to have like a portion of their staff to regulate it for sure.
absolutely,
So
and
a few
I
people
think they
are gonna be
definitely have a
getting
plan.
hired.
They
Yeah,
definitely
they
have a
100% have a
plan.
plan.
Get us on the staff. Get us on the staff. We'll run it. We know what's up.
Yeah, absolutely. Neither of us have experience with NFTs, but we'll do it.
Yeah.
Whatever opportunity I can get.
We're good idea men.
Yeah, exactly. Did you not just hear us cooking for like 15 minutes?
Fire.
Let us cook for you. Let us cook for you, NHL. Let us cook for you. All right. I'm pretty much out of ideas for that unless you have anything else.
I can always think of more, but I'm good. I had so much fun with that though.
Yeah, we were having fun with that for sure. All right, let's move on to our sports quote of the weeks. So you kind of already did yours, I guess, right, during the NWSL one, or do you have anything to add?
No, just in some ways and form, go check out that documentary called Truth Be Told. I know I'm going to be watching it tonight, and just kind of go and learn the story of the US NWSL. Sorry, and the story of U.S. women's soccer and how they've grown in the last year and what they've really come from. I think for our viewers and people who are wanting to be invested in these sports going forward, who have these huge new avenues, especially if you're looking to get into sports, knowing so much about the areas that you can get invested in and the connections you can make. I think this is a great opportunity to know more about the NWSL, especially if you're looking to work in professional soccer, because it's another huge opportunity for you to go and get a job, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's definitely something a lot of people that are working in sports don't really consider is that they could go work for like the NWSL. I feel a lot of people target like the major four leagues, but they don't
yeah,
consider necessarily something like the NWSL, which honestly would be a really smart move to get into right now because it's like that stock where like you're buying low and it's going to grow, and they're definitely positioned to grow right now. So I think I think they're going to see a lot more people start applying to their jobs for sure. And that's another thing is they're going to start getting more talent and more attention,
mhm.
not just even on the staff side, from the player perspective too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's going to be huge, and like as a future sports worker, future person who's working in sports, right? The places like the USL, the UPSL, the NWSL, USL Women's, right? Those are places where I should be applying, right? Those are places
Right.
where it's not an already flooded market, and there's places where you're going to have opportunities as a college, somebody straight out of college, to get a really unique opportunity and really test yourself, and make
Absolutely.
some amazing connections, really make a name for yourself, right? I can go and I can apply to be a youth programs director at the New York Red Bulls, right? Which is great, and I think that's probably something that I have on my job application list for when I graduate and when I finish my MBA in 2 years' time, right? But that's something that's like I know there's going to be tons of other people applying for that, just like there would be with the NWSL job. But I think I'm gonna, with my portfolio, I think I'm gonna have a higher opportunity with the NWSL and a higher amount of growth with that than I would with the New York Red Bulls.
Yeah,
No hate on the New York Red Bulls because I love them and I would love to work for them. So
that
just
makes total sense.
planting the seed of thought, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. So for those who are listening who do want to work in sports, maybe consider the NWSL as something you might want to apply to that you hadn't considered before because they're definitely on the come up. All right, so on to my sports quote of the week. So I need to explain a little bit of context before I read my actual quote. So Brian Cashman, who's the general manager of the New York Yankees, said this about one of his players, John Carlos Stanton, the other day. He said that Stanton is going to wind up getting hurt again, more likely than not, because it seems to be a part of his game. So
Interesting.
right. So that's a GM kind of taking a shot, in a lot of people's opinions, at one of his players, right?
Hmm.
Which is honestly something that we don't particularly see a lot in sports. That's
Right.
and it was vague, but it was pretty clear what he was doing, right? Um, and my quote is from his agent Joel Wolf. I read the context of the entire interview. I think it's a good reminder for all free agents considering signing in New York, both foreign and domestic, that to play for that team, you've got to be made of Teflon, both mentally and physically, because you can never let your guard down, even in the off season.
Huge
So,
statement.
right. So, my question is the agent right, or are free agents not going to want to sign in New York now because of this, right? Do you want to play for a general manager who not trashes you, but you know makes comments like that to the media about you when you get injured?
Mm. Yeah, no, great question. It's very true. And I think this is a more overall sports issue rather than just specific to the New York Yankees or to this situation, right? When you look at the top teams in every league, there's a team who has probably the highest market share, has some of the highest fan bases, and because of that, say a Manchester United, right, or say a New York Yankees, they get so much media attention and so much media attention of when you're not doing well and you're expected to do well, you're going to have a lot of critics, right, including
Absolutely.
people who are in your own staff, right. So be able to go and play for a franchise which is historically one of the most popular in the world, right? In a city which is one of the most populated in the U.S. in a
Right.
in a city like New York, right? In a situation where because of this you're under a lot of stress. There's so many different factors, and there's so many eyes on you and your team that when you get injured as one of those stars, as one of those free agents, as somebody who's come in and is expected to make an impact, you're going to hear about it, right? You look
Yeah.
at Manchester United right now, and I don't remember what place
But
they are in
typically,
the
you don't
Premier
hear
League,
about
but
it
they
from
aren't
your
doing well.
own GM, at least not publicly. It's usually behind closed doors, right? It's unspoken.
Correct. Correct. But I think the comment he's making isn't directly in response to, although it's directly in response to the GM statement, I think it speaks to an overall issue in sports where when you sign for those big teams and those teams don't succeed in the way they're expected to, you are
You
going
receive
to
a
be
lot of
criticized.
criticism.
And you
Yeah,
have to have
absolutely.
mental toughness to deal with that because you're hearing about it from so many different people. And that's really can be really hard to have that many people like
Right.
kind of talking about you
So
and being
you
like,
think he
"Oh, they're
meant it
shit."
literally? He wasn't being like sarcastic, like, "Oh, you
No,
have to be." You don't think he was being sarcastic? No.
no, not at all.
I
I
read
think
it
that
as he
is
was
a
being.
very literal statement.
Okay. I read it as he was being a little sarcastic, like, you know, you have to be super. You have to be super tough in every aspect because you can't get injured, according to the GM.
Right, which
that,
is
like that
definitely
kind
a
of
piece
thing.
of it too. Definitely a piece of it
Yeah.
too,
Like
right?
I felt like
You
there was a
have
little snark behind it.
no, it absolutely, and him as that agent of that player, that's definitely a comment that he should be making, right?
Yeah,
Telling the GM
right. I
essentially
get it.
to
Like defend
get
your
off.
guy. Like I get it. Yeah. But I just thought it was interesting to me. Like I wonder if Cashman heard from his PR team anything about saying that. Like maybe we shouldn't say that about one of our players. Like it is true he does have an injury history like that. Like that is a fact, right? But to say like, oh, that's part of his game, feels like I don't know. That feels like a shot, right? Um,
It does definitely.
it could have been. It could have definitely been a better statement. Something like, um, you know, injury is always a possibility, but we're hoping to have him out there for as long as we can, right?
Absolutely, right. There's definitely a better way to make this statement, and a better way to protect yourself and kind of protect your team and the way you unify. I don't think it was a good move from the GM at all, right?
No,
But I think it definitely speaks to that overarching theme of when you're on that quote unquote biggest team with the biggest
big
market
market
share or
teams.
market shares, right? Big market teams, right? That are historically have that connection to fans and have that connection to media, right? It's hard to avoid that, and sometimes things slip.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, we're all human. I get it. Like sometimes things slip, and I know I just criticized him a lot, but like I do recognize that like mistakes happen, right? You're not always going to be perfect, but I feel like before a press conference, right? I'm sure somebody's in his ear telling him like, "This is what you're going to say if you're asked this question," like those type of things. Of course, there are meetings about that, so I feel like somebody had to have prepared him to talk about Giancarlo Stanton, right? He's like that's one of their biggest guys on contract. He's got to be at least a little bit prepared, right?
yeah,
So, like things slip out, like we get it, but at the same time, that's something that um, kind of should be a little bit unspoken, or at least spoken behind closed doors, right? Within an organization, you don't I don't think you want to let other GMs know that that's a part of his game either, right? Because what if you're
yeah,
trying to trade him? Then they're going to be like, "Hey, you said this, so we don't want to sign him for as much, or we won't give up as much, or like as high value of players, because we know injuries are, as you said, a part of his game, right?"
right.
So not only does it put him in a bad position, but it also puts the entire organization in a bad position. If they decide to do anything with him in the future, such as trading.
Yeah, and it's defamation in some way or form, right? So it's definitely hard to receive that as a player from somebody who brought you into the franchise, and is part of your management team, but also kind of hard to kind of give that out as a franchise and be like, yeah, he's just going to get hurt again. Like,
Yeah,
that's
right.
not something you should be. That's not something you should be saying to the media. And from the New York Yankees media team, right? They could definitely do better there, right? And I think they
Right.
know
For
that, and
sure.
they should know that. And if they don't, I don't know where their heads are at. So,
Right. Like even if you're frustrated with the situation with him being hurt a lot, a number of years in a row, which is true, like that is definitely a fact. That's the case, but you just can't say that, right? You can't like show the frustration. You still have to understand like this is one of your largest guys on contract. I think he's like the third or fourth largest contract that they have. I know it's Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole, and then I believe it's Stan is the third one. So this is your third largest contract that you have. So you have to treat him like that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And saying like they're basically calling him injury prone. Like they didn't use those words, but that's essentially what they're saying. Why are you gonna try to annoy a guy who's you're paying the third most money to? You know what I mean? He's not gonna want to play for you. Do you want to get value out of the deal? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
maybe I'm being a little critical and a little biased, but that's just my point of view on it.
No, you're absolutely right, and I totally agree. Right, it's not a logical decision that they just made. Right, it's not something
Right.
you say in front of the cameras. It's not something that
Right.
you say face to face with the guy that you have playing for you. You want to
I
believe
mean,
in him,
I
and you
feel
want to
like
say we're
even
investing.
I feel like if they had that conversation and he had said to him like, if the GM had said to Stan himself like face to face that like in a one-on-one conversation in a room, that would make more sense in context to me than saying it
Mm.
to the media. You know what I mean?
I think, yes, I agree with you there, right? But I think if he's having that one-on-one conversation with him, he's not just telling him you're going to get injured again.
Right.
He's telling him you're going to get injured again. What can we do to make
To
sure
help
that
you.
doesn't happen, or to minimize the chance of that happening? Whether
Right.
it be through putting him through more training and giving the ATs more time with him, where he's taking care of his body more, and he's meditating and he's stretching or whatever it is, right? I don't know specifically good stretches for baseball, but like like a good example of this, right? Pep Guardiola gave a similar comment about Erling Haaland, who before he went to Man City had a really, really bad kind of not bad, but had a serious injury record where every year he would get injured for at least 1 month of the year, right, where he's
Right.
missing games, and he's a major goal scorer for any team, and so you're missing out on that star player, somebody who you're paying one of the top earners at your club, right? So how did Man City go and manage that? And Pep acknowledged, yeah, he has an injury record, but we're managing that. We're making sure he's given that time. We're managing his nutrition and all these things. And that's a conversation where you sound like a professional, not a
Right.
conversation where you sound like a sport
Frustrated.
pundit or a sport commenter or some random guy on Twitter going and saying, "Oh, he's just going to get hurt again."
Absolutely. Yeah. That's actually kind of the perfect analogy. It sounds like an angry fan on Twitter. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it sounds like. And to me, you do have to maintain a little bit more professionalism than that, just in my opinion. But I do think that's something going forward that they should try to work on is not is having that level of professionalism even when talking about players that do have an injury prone track record, not throwing them under the bus essentially, right?
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, that's still your guy, right? And he still has to play for your team. And if you want him to play well, you want him to have good feelings about the organization, right? Because otherwise, let's say he goes to another team, he can just start saying whatever he wants to the media about your organization, right? And then you have a PR disaster on your hands, right? So it's just there was a smarter way to handle it. That's all it is.
agreed. Yes,
Man, we did an hour today. I was
I
not
know we were
expecting that.
flying.
I know. I thought like okay, we both have stuff to do today, like later, so we'll just do like a quick half hour and get out of here. But no, we went for an hour. That was
When
good.
it's flowing, Paul. Just gotta
It was it was
let the river
yeah,
go.
it was flowing today for sure. All right, I hope you all enjoyed that. I think that was one of our more fun conversations, at least specifically the last two sections I very much enjoyed. So follow us on socials if you have not already. SBT_podcast on Instagram, SBT.pod23 on TikTok, and SBT_pod on Twitter. And we also are up on YouTube now, and our website is sportsbusinesstake.com. So if you know anybody who works in the sports industry who's looking to be a guest on a podcast or talk about their job, or would be willing to give us some insight into their tips on how to get into the industry, let us know. Contact us through our website, contact us through our Instagram, our Twitter, whatever. And, because we are very much open to guests right now, very much looking for guests right now. So, I signed us up for a couple of guest matching sites, but nothing's really come out of it so far. So I'm trying to do whatever we can to get some high quality guests on here. So please let us know, and thank you as always for listening. We could not do that. We could not do any of this without anybody listening, right? That would just wouldn't make sense. But hopefully, tell your friends about us, and we'll get more people to listen, right? So thank you guys for listening, and have a good week.